Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe, but there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful January the 7th, 2020. Guando Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, a typical beautiful day in the South. You wake up in the morning, it's raining, it all goes away with cascading sunshine.
Cascading sunshine. We would love some cascading sunshine here in Northern California. They're expecting some raindrops for the 49ers and Vikings, but I'm sure they'll all have umbrellas, Big C. It's all fair in love and war. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, just tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Big C Sports, powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear, welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, also Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Big C, so much happening in the great sports world. But no matter what's going on, we're still having military talk. And everybody acts like war doesn't have any consequences. But when men come home, we love to pay homage to our military veterans. A lot of them are still going through issues. National Suicide Hotline, 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, as we think about our veterans every day in America, and now veterans are being troubled by these crises that are escalating in the Middle East. You know, they're going to be thinking, why do you need to send someone else's child to fight your battle? And that's what these veterans are going to be thinking, Charlton. And it brings back horrid memories for many of these veterans, Charlton, who've had to serve in the Middle East. And the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number hopefully is a way to help stem the tide of suicide that's become such a horrific disease in this country, Charlton. These veterans go over and they fight, they come back, they're troubled, they have mental and physical issues after dealing with the stresses of war, and they don't have outlets. As we think about giving out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, many veterans over the years have become homeless and destitute and may not have a cell phone that they can reach out and call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number with.
Yep.
So as we see people on the street, we should not be judgmental to what someone's plight is. You don't know if it's a veteran or some other reason why somebody is on the street. But suicide is something that we have to try to prevent in America as American citizens. I know our government is troubled with many things that it's dealing with on a daily basis, and veterans are a secondary, maybe even a third stage thought to our politicians. They think, hey, I'm safe at home making, a lot of money, so why should I worry about these people who have gone out and fought and put their lives on the line for this country to have sovereignty, for me to be safe?
Yeah.
So as a broadcaster, we have to extend this olive branch that our government is not extending to our great veterans of the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. And not just our great veterans, Charlton, but our everyday people in America. We think about the teen suicide rate in America, which is horrific within itself, and it shouldn't happen in this country. So if you see someone in trouble, talk to them, ask if you could offer them a hand. And if you can, call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number for them if you see someone's in a stressful way.
It's always important. We got to reach out and help somebody. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. And people can get some help. I know there's so much about this great country that we all look forward to. But I just appreciate how almost every time in my life where I've fallen down, somebody was there to help me get up. Oftentimes without even asking. Maybe it's how you can carry yourself. But every now and then, people just need to know there's a number and a place they can go to get help and not just who won a game. So I really appreciate the fact that you brought that up. Big C, since you've been doing this for almost half the year now, I've seen other programs do the same thing on the network, TV, and radio level, so I really appreciate that. You know, football is big. It's a billion-dollar industry, and I want to get on some things at the end of the show that I really want your thoughts on, because I think you're very honest when it comes to that. But Pro Football Hall of Fame, one step closer to finalizing its largest ever inducting class, Big C, the 2020 Hall of Famer. And I just want to get your thoughts. Does Hall of Fame really mean something for players, or does winning a championship mean more, Big C? Your thoughts?
Charlton, they both mean so much to players. But when you think about winning a championship, that's a team of 53 players.
Yeah.
And at the time when you win a Super Bowl, they give out some 200 rings and medallions to go around your neck, Charlton. So there's a lot of people who participate in the Super Bowl who really don't play actively in the game,
yeah,
but they walk around with rings. I have a friend who has 3 Super Bowl rings, and he was on a practice roster.
Yeah.
Never played a game. So when you think about the significance of a Super Bowl championship, it's great. But when you look at Hall of Fame rings and jackets, Charlton, that represents immortality and greatness throughout your career.
Yeah, I know. I have a gold jacket that I still have in my closet. I bought it for the clubs back in the day, Big C, but it wasn't for the Hall of Fame. Hey, maybe the Radio Hall of Fame someday, that golden circle they talk about after doing great in the world of broadcast business. So as we get into the world of Hall of Famers, and again, everybody, even announcing Hall of Fame, and I don't see Jim Plunkett's name, it doesn't make any sense, but I understand he'll probably get in sometime. I just hope it's sooner than later. Tony Boselli, left tackle, Jacksonville Jaguars, 1995 through 2001. He was arguably the greatest player in Jacksonville Jaguar history. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, he's the first player that the Jaguars ever drafted in their franchise, Charlton, when they were an expansion franchise. And Tony Boselli went on to greatness. He played at USC, where he was an offensive tackle there. He came into the NFL as a dominant lineman. Only injuries beset him, Charlton, not allowing him to play longer in his career. It's going to be interesting. Does he get in?
I think he has to get in, but say it ain't so. Would you ever think we would do a Hall of Fame list? We have a minority quarterback out of Stanford University, the great Jim Plunkett. He played for the Boston Patriots, also known as the New England Patriots, Oakland Raiders. He has 2 Super Bowl championships. Still not up there, neither is his coach, Big C. Some things are just doesn't make any sense. But Steve Atwater, Denver Broncos, 1989, 1998. The 1998 season, he played for 89 through 98. The Jets in 99, he played for them. 2-time All-Pro, 8-time Pro Bowler. Steve Atwater was one of the fiercest hitters in his era, even though people think of Ronnie a lot. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, when it comes to safeties and dominant play of safeties, Steve Atwater is right up there at the top, the creme de la creme. And it's been amazing that he's been overlooked for so many years in the Hall of Fame. He made the all-decade team, Charlton, when he was after his playing career. You think about what he did. He has one of the most fierce hits ever in Monday Night Football, where he met Christian Okoye of Kansas City, the Nigerian Nightmare, and knocked him backwards. But Steve Atwater is much deserving of being in the NFL Hall of Fame.
Do you wonder why it's amazing the guy that big? Normally, you can see him also at the defensive end or linebacker spot. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you look at Steve Atwater, he stood 6'4", weighed about 225, 230 pounds, Charlton, playing free safety in the NFL. Not strong safety, free safety.
Yeah.
But he had the speed and agility to cover the receivers or tight end.
Yeah, he sure could. A guy who tried to stay out of his way. Isaac Bruce, the great Isaac Bruce, the greatest show on turf, the receiver for the St. Louis Rams at the time, 1994 through 2007. Played for the 49ers 2008 through 2009. A 4-time Pro Bowler, Isaac Bruce recorded 1,024 receptions, 15,208 yards. He had 91 touchdowns. Big C, your thoughts?
Known as the Reverend when he played, Charlton. Isaac Bruce was a phenomenal wide receiver in the NFL. And in that Rams Super Bowl victory in New Orleans against the Titans, he was the one who caught the decisive touchdown in that game, but he had such an electrifying career. When you think about the players that were on that roster with him in St. Louis, two of them are already in the Hall of Fame, Kurt Warner and Marshall Faulk.
Yeah, Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, and I still remember how fast that team was. They seemed fast maybe because they were playing on AstroTurf. I don't know if AstroTurf makes you any faster than grass. I'm sure it depends on how high they have the grass. Like Notre Dame would understand that, Big C. But when you have that many yards and 91 touchdowns, as you mentioned, he had to share the ball. It wasn't just he as the only go-to guy, Big C. Your thoughts?
No, it was an offense, Charlton, that was balanced. When you look at the receivers, running backs on that team, Kurt Warner did a marvelous job of dispensing the football on that team, Charlton, that kept everybody happy.
Yeah, it really kept a lot of people happy. I also want to turn back to the defensive side of the ball. You think about Leroy Butler, safety for the Green Bay Packers, 1990 through 2001. A member of the 1990s All-Decade Team, Big C. Butler was the first player in NFL history to finish with 20 sacks and 20 interceptions in his career, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, being up there in Green Bay, Charlton, Leroy Butler flew under the radar. Not many people were known of his career. Everybody would have a highlight season. He was one of the most consistent backs in the NFL, just like Steve Atwater was. And one thing that many people don't realize about Leroy Butler, he was the player who initiated the Lambeau Leap on an interception return for a touchdown. Leroy Butler created the Lambeau Leap that all the players do now.
Isn't that amazing? I would always wonder how you can get targeted or you can get it would be excessive celebration. Remember those crazy days of the league? Excessive celebration. I don't think anyone has ever been hit for excessive celebration with the Lambeau Leap, but I think it was Ezekiel Elliott when he jumped into the Salvation Army jar down in Texas. I think he got a fine. I might be wrong, but does that make any sense, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I think the Lambeau Leap was a natural reaction of the way that the league looked at it. It wasn't trying to bring extra attention to yourself. It was a celebratory situation with the fans of Lambeau Field.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's one of the most original things in sports, and I would love to see more people being able to do that, not just after they walk off the field. I think that's really amazing. Alan Fania is guard for the Pittsburgh Steelers, 1998 through 2007. And 2008 through 2009 with the Cardinals in 2010. One of the most dominant interior linemen of his era. Always guys that are overrated are sometimes the guys that have the ball in their hand all the time. Guys who are underrated are guys who make room for those guys to run the ball. Big C, your thoughts?
Alan Faneca was a beast when he was with the Pittsburgh Steelers, a Super Bowl winner with that team, moved on to the Jets, Charlton, and continued his career. But he's one of those guys who was what you call a road grader.
Yeah.
He kept his nose to the grindstone, Charlton, always opening holes for great backs. When you think about blocking for Jerome Bettis, blocking for Curtis Martin, Charlton, this guy should be in the Hall of Fame for the backs that he blocked for.
Yeah, it's amazing. Every time we see a great running back from Walter Payton, Herschel Walker, whether it's Emmitt Smith, or someone like Marcus Allen, everybody says, oh, what a great running back. But it's the guys that block for you that makes it all possible, Big C. I know that good old boy down in Tennessee understand Henry. Sam Mills, linebacker, New Orleans Saints, 1986 through 1994. The Panthers, 95 through 97. He's a former undrafted rookie, the great Sam Mills, Big C. He did not even break into the NFL until he was 27 years old. Named to the Pro Bowl 4 times in his first 7 seasons, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Sam Mills that we lost several years ago horrifically to cancer, Charlton, Sam Mills, a very diminutive middle linebacker, one of the greatest linebacking corps of all time with the New Orleans Saints. But as you talk about his plight to the NFL, Charlton, he had to take that backward long road, Charlton, just like Warren Moon did getting into the NFL. He started out in Canada, went to the USFL, Charlton, and finally got a crack in the NFL with the New Orleans Saints. And when he did, Charlton, he showed people you should not have looked me over for all those years, becoming a perennial all-pro player, Charlton, and one of the most memorable players in the Carolina Panthers franchise, Charlton. They have a statue outside the stadium recognizing Sam Mills.
Yeah, amazing life. You know, we always say we want to live 100 years old. I want to be 120, Big C. It's how you live. And just so many great people have lived a great life, Big C. Another great athlete, Torrey Holt. You think about the greatest show on turf, for the St. Louis Rams 1999 through 2008. The Jaguars 2009, a member of the Greatest Show on Turf, Big C. He finished with 920 receptions, 13,382 yards, and 74 touchdowns. And he also had a guy named Bruce on the other side of the line of scrimmage, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about that, you got a dual threat, Charlton, when you walk out. They're actually triple threat with the Rams that you had in those days with Marshall Faulk in the backfield.
Yep.
And when you had Holt and Bruce on the wideouts, you wonder how was Kurt Warner able to keep his arm healthy, Charlton, as much as he had to throw to these wideouts. But when you think about how do you line up and defend Bruce and Holt at the same time, you can't double cover everybody because you had Marshall Faulk coming out of the backfield.
Always, and Marshall Faulk could do his thing. He was, I don't know who was faster, whether Holt or Bruce or Faulk, but athletes are oftentimes in 40-yard dash times. Could you imagine? Well, no wonder Kurt Warner was good, Big C, back in the day. Everyone you threw to could take it to the house, Big C. That's always great to have the Greatest Show on Turf. Steve Hutchinson, guard, Seattle Seahawks, 2001 through 2005, Minnesota Vikings, 2006 through 2011, and the Tennessee Titans, 2012, one of the best guards of his era. Think about this. 5-time All-Pro, 7-time Pro Bowler, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, as you constantly talk about the running backs and the guys on offense who get all the glory.
Yeah.
Steve Hutchinson opened up glory holes for a whole lot of great running backs, Charlton. He was one of those dominant guys, just like we talked about Alan Faneca earlier. Think about him blocking for Sean Alexander, who set an NFL rushing record for touchdowns when he was blocking for him. Think about him blocking for Adrian Peterson, who came up just a couple of yards short of the single-season rushing record with the Minnesota Vikings. So Steve Hutchinson deserves all the recognition in the world. You blocked for two of the greatest record runners in NFL history.
Yeah, I mean, nobody ever gets his yards on his own. I remember if there is ever a running back that did not need much help, that doesn't make sense because without a line, you're going to get hit behind the backfield every single time. But Edgerrin James, Big C, running back, Indianapolis Colts, 1999 through 2005. The Cardinals 2006 through 2007, the Seattle Seahawks 2009, a rushing champion in each of his first two NFL seasons. Basically, he gained 12,246 yards and scored 80 touchdowns. And imagine every now and then you do get an offensive line call for holding some of you guys, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Edgerrin James out of the University of Miami, Charlton, he's the reason why Marshall Faulk ended up with the St. Louis Rams.
Yep.
They traded Marshall Faulk to draft Edgerrin James to pair him up with Peyton Manning, Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, Charlton. Just a tremendous offense that they had there in Indianapolis. And Edgerrin James was a perennial all-pro running back.
Yeah, he really was. It's amazing. When I saw the bowl game, Big C, and I saw the University of Miami play against Louisiana Tech, and they lost. And you think about all the Hall of Famers, let alone college All-Americans, but the Hall of Famers that came out of the University of Miami, how far that program's really fallen. Thinking of rising. The great John Lynch, we can call him great now, Big C, the 49ers number one seed. He played safety for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 1993 to 2003. For the Broncos 2004 through 2007. He's a 5-time Pro Bowler, and I'm sure he's managing a lot of Pro Bowl contracts coming up too, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, John Lynch is one of those players that's fortunate to have a couple Super Bowl rings, Charlton, one from Tampa Bay and one from Denver. But he had a heck of a career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Charlton. That was a tremendous defense that they had down there built by Tony Dungy in Tampa. He moved on to Denver along with Peyton Manning, was able to get that second Super Bowl ring, Charlton. He's one of those safeties, once again, in the running for the Hall of Fame. It's a deep class of safeties.
Now, he doesn't strike you as what a safety would be because most safeties are considered very fleet of foot, can cover sideline to sideline. But Lynch wasn't as fast, but he was tactical. He knew where to be in the right time, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, he was a student of the game. He could put himself in the right position defensively. He understood what he was looking at when an offense came to the line of scrimmage. That's the reason why he's the GM of the 49ers today.
Yeah, he put himself in the right spot, Big C. Pro Bowl Hall of Famer is one step closer to finalizing its largest ever inducted class of 2020. I think about a guy that has maybe the longest hairdo ever in the history of the Hall of Fame, Troy Polamalu, safety for the Steelers 2003 to 2014. Big C, I think he went to the great USC. He may still have that white horse in his backyard. The greatest strong safety of his era. Polamalu was an 8-time Pro Bowler out of the great USC. Big C, your thoughts?
Troy Polamalu, signified what the Steelers' defense was all about. It wasn't the steel curtain when he was there, but it was pretty damn close.
Yeah.
And when you look at Polamalu, what he meant to that team, Charlton, you saw after his retirement how dominant he was as a player. Not always recognized when you're playing, but his attributes always stood out when he was on the field with the Steelers.
Yeah, and also, like we talked about, Lance, not the biggest guy, maybe not even the fastest, but there are players who have they have a knack for knowing where to be on the field at all times, and I thought he did a great job at Southern Cal, also with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Big C, Richard Seymour, defensive tackle, New England Patriots, 2001 through 2008. The Raiders, 2009 through 2012. Seymour helped lead the Patriots in his first of 6 Super Bowl wins during his rookie season. He was a 5-time Pro Bowler playing with the great Tom Brady and Belichick. Big C, your thoughts?
Seymour was a first-round draft pick of the Patriots, Charlton, out of the University of Georgia. His flexibility allowed them to do a lot of things defensively when he was in New England. He could play any of the 3 down defensive line positions that Bill Belichick rotated him throughout. But he was a force throughout his career with the Patriots, picking up 3 Super Bowl rings, Charlton, with that organization prior to finishing up his career as an Oakland Raider on the West Coast.
Let me get your thoughts on the thing that when you think about coaching, people think about Bill Belichick, and they always say Bill Belichick and the great Tom Brady. But Belichick has had so many great players that have been on the Patriots rosters and guys that have retired. And then Brady's still doing his thing. Imagine what he must feel like. He's coming to the end of his career. Maybe he has another good, solid 2 seasons. 45, I don't believe, but I know he could play another 2 years. Can you imagine how many great players that he's played with that are now ready for induction to the Hall of Fame? They couldn't play anymore. The bodies gave out. Our contracts didn't work out right. And he's still playing. What are his thoughts when he's been maybe the mentor to so many Hall of Fame players? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, one of the things about Bill Belichick's career in New England is he's always wanted to move on from players. Brady is the only player that he has not moved on from in his coaching career in New England. So Brady has been the stalwart there, Charlton. But all of these players have been moving parts in that organization, Seymour as well as many other defensive and offensive players. Bill Belichick always is in the mood to reload.
Always in the mood to reload. And I just want to ask you one more thing, because you brought it up. And you brought it up about 2 weeks ago, so what just happened today could not have happened because you brought it up 2 weeks ago. And you were talking about coaches and Garrett being able to go to the Giants and why Jerry Jones was taking so long to have him, to cut him, to let him go just at the contract expired. He knew the Giants would be a little bit desperate to hire somebody. And we'll get into it in the second half, but the Giants are looking at a guy that's never coached anything. I thought Big C Sports, Big C, you were the only one that I recall saying that he would go to a rival. And that's oftentimes what you don't want your head coach to do. Just elaborate on that before we finish on this list, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, you don't want a coach to go to a rival, and especially a divisional rival who has been your nemesis for many years, Charlton. And Jerry Jones played hardball in trying to control Jason Garrett's career.
Yeah, I thought that was very impressive on your part to talk about that. And then that's what they're doing. They're bringing him in to kind of mentor a guy from the Patriots staff that we'll get into in the second half. Big C, Zach Thomas, the linebacker, Miami Dolphins, 1996 through 2007, Cowboys 2008, one of the best middle linebackers of his era, a 7-time Pro Bowler, but he wasn't built like a Lawrence Taylor. He didn't have sideline-to-sideline capability like LT. He wasn't menacing and piercing like them good old boys from the monsters of the Midway when you think about how dominant they were at Big C. And he wasn't like just some of the guys that can run you down from the linebacker spot. But Thomas, he had a knack for the ball also at Big C. Your thoughts?
Charlton, physically, he's going to remind you a lot of Sam Mills, this linebacker out of Texas Tech, who no one really gave a real shot in the NFL. He reminded a lot of Dolphins faithful of Nick Bonacani, the late Nick Bonacani, who roamed the sidelines during their Super Bowl eras, Charlton. with that undefeated team.
Yeah.
But Zach Thomas delivered every day on the field. He knew the game. He understood what offenses were doing. That's what made him so great throughout his career. And that's the thing, when you lack athleticism, and nobody in the NFL really lacks athleticism. We don't always look like the other athlete that people become so enamored with.
Right.
But Zach Thomas' intelligence was right there with any linebacker in the NFL.
Right there with any of them. It's amazing how many he could have been a part of that no-name defense that the Miami Dolphins had back in the day, because you wouldn't expect he would be a dominant linebacker just standing next to him. Reggie Wayne, wide receiver, Indianapolis Colts, 2011 through 2014. One of the most consistent wide receivers, Big C, of his era. 6-time Pro Bowler. Finished with 1,070 catches, 14,345 yards, 82 touchdowns. Had a Hall of Famer also throwing the ball to him, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you think about the core players that Peyton Manning had at his disposal in Indianapolis. We already know that Ezra James is on the list, Charlton, who played there with him.
Yep.
We think about Marvin Harrison, who is already in the Hall of Fame, as well as Peyton Manning will be there in the next day or two himself. But you think about Reggie Wayne. This kid out of Syracuse, Charlton, was just one of the greatest receivers in the NFL. He was overshadowed by all the other superstars on his team, Charlton, but his day has come for an opportunity to be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, definitely. When you think about those guys that have earned it, Big C, everybody can say, well, he played with a great quarterback or he played with a great coach. But something that you have to always understand is Jim Plunkett still not in the Hall of Fame. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, he has 2 Super Bowl championships. Last I checked, I think Peyton had 2, but Peyton did it with 2 different teams. And Plunkett did it within, I think, 3 years. They beat the Eagles, and then they also had that win against the Redskins. But anyway, some things are just above my knowledge, Big C. I saw a guy break his leg one time, but before I saw him break his leg, I saw him playing a high school football game, and I remember it so well because Barry Switzer was doing the press calling. It was up in Nevada. They played at the University of Nevada, Reno. It was an all-star game. They brought players in from all over the country. And I'll never forget how this kid was so dominant when he played college football at Notre Dame for the Fighting Irish. I saw them every year play against USC and playing against teams like Miami and Michigan, etc. But with the 49ers, this guy, he was just such a presence, a quiet guy, but a force. Bryant Young, defensive tackle for the 49ers, 1994 through 2007, earned 4 Pro Bowls while recording 89.5 sacks, 614 tackles, 12 forced fumbles, and 7 fumble recoveries, and he also played with a lot of hungry linemen, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about all the great linemen that the San Francisco 49ers had, Charlton, during their Super Bowl years before and after, Bryant Young is undoubtedly the greatest defensive lineman ever to play with the San Francisco 49ers. People talk about Charles Haley. They'll talk about Cedric Hardman, who played there years ago, Charlton. People talk about all of these great linemen that have played there. But when you think about Bryant Young and his productivity out of University of Notre Dame as a number 1 draft pick of the 49ers, playing through all those injuries, being a consistent leader, through all the greatness that they had out there in San Francisco, Charlton, he deserves to be in the NFL Hall of Fame as a defensive lineman.
Yeah, I really just love watching the first time I stood on the sideline at an NFL game. It was in San Francisco, and the 49ers were playing the Seattle Seahawks at that time. It was just a preseason game. But when I saw there was one player for the Seattle Seahawks, and I can't remember his name, but I'd never forget what I saw. I was standing about 15 feet away on the sideline, and he took on a block, pushed the guy off, and with one hand took a running back and slammed him on the ground. That was right around the 96 season, Big C. I said, that's what steroids looks like. I'm not saying any guys on it, but now I know the result of it. We're going to take the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. When we come back, I'm going to talk to Big C about some things that are happening in the NFL. You know, we talk about the Rooney Rule all the time and why they should maybe call it something else. We'll take the Big C timeout. We'll come right back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. You can follow Big C Sports on the two apps that I love, and give it a try. Say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television, also Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. You just got to have the app. Big C, we talk about Hall of Fame. We talk about so many players that have earned the right to be there. I was asking you, would players rather have a Hall of Fame jacket or a Super Bowl championship ring? And you said a lot of guys would love to have that jacket because you got to play to get the jacket. You just got to be on the team to get the ring. But I want to ask you about the new coaching hire, the New York Giants. I was asking about Garrett, but I was asking about Garrett 2 weeks ago, Big C. This is not something that just came up today. 2 weeks ago, and I was talking about the same thing that Troy Aikman has been talking about, why Jerry Jones is doing what he was doing. And he wanted to keep Garrett away from maybe going to where he's going to be, the New York Giants. But the Giants, they finalized the deal to hire Joe Judge as a head coach, and prior to that, he's just a special teams coordinator and wide receivers coach. Give me your feeling on why they would make Garrett. Well, why would they make Garrett the guy that teach as opposed to the guy that coach? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Garrett is still under contract with the Dallas Cowboys. The Giants had to make a decision on a coach.
Yeah.
So I guess this guy must have interviewed well, Charlton, more than anything else, being only a receivers coach, never being a coordinator of any kind in the NFL. But the thing that perplexed me the most about anything, this alleged Rooney Rule that is supposed to be out there where NFL has to interview minority coaches. I've seen a couple of these hires where teams have said, we got our guy. So they've had no intentions on hiring a minority coach. How do minorities get an opportunity to even coach in the NFL if you want to be realistic about it?
Yeah.
With the openings that are out there, and you're talking about bringing guys in that are retreads, you're bringing in Mike McCarthy in Dallas. Mike McCarthy, Jim Caldwell had a better record his last year in Detroit than Mike McCarthy had in Green Bay.
Yeah.
You think about Marvin Lewis. He's been a perennial winner. He can't get a job in the NFL. So as we sit up and talk about hiring coaches in the NFL and people saying, well, it's fair, it's an easy process, look at Matt Rule, who just got the job with the Carolina Panthers. Matt Rule got the job with the Carolina Panthers. And you talk about the amount of money. He got John Gruden money.
Yeah.
He got 6 years, 7 years, whatever it is, $70 million.
Wow.
Potential $70 million over 7 years.
Yeah.
So you look at this guy who was at Temple, he was at Baylor, now he's in the NFL. And we have defense and offensive coordinators in the NFL that are African-American. Look at Leslie Frazier, who can't get an interview. Look at Eric Bieniemy, who can't get an interview. Look at Brian Leftwich, who can't get an interview. So these African-American coaches have been ostracized by the NFL hierarchy.
Yeah.
They fought for years against having black quarterbacks in the NFL. And now that black quarterbacks are taking over the playoffs, and 50% of the quarterbacks left in the playoffs are African Americans, and they don't want to see that from the head coaching realm, Charlton. As we look at black coaches not getting a chance to interview, what the hell is it going to take now in the NFL for that to happen?
Well, it's going to take honesty because, Big C, we've been talking about this for many, many moons now. It's not just this year. And it's going to take African-American men to talk about it, and our white brethren, too. It's just like, who doesn't want to see equality? Really, when you think about it, we go back to segregation, Brown versus Board of Education, Plessy versus Ferguson, all of these things that made equality happen, and it made our society better. And so it's going to take good people. It's not even about, well, it is about skin color, but on the side that has the power, as long as white guys are afraid to say, hey, that's not right, then things won't change. But as you mentioned the other day, there's something called a Billionaires Boy Club. And the reason Marvin Lewis was brought down there to Dallas by Jerry Jones, so they could say, hey, we honored the Rooney Rule. They had the white guy hired before they brought in Lewis. And that's their choice. That's what people do. But to act like that's not what they do is disingenuous. So I want to just bring this to you, and you already know about this, but black Americans in the NFL, there's 2 offensive coordinators and 10 defensive coordinators. As you mentioned, they're oftentimes overlooked. They'll take a guy he coached Baylor I think Bailey was blown out by Georgia last time I checked in that bowl game, and that gave that man $70 million because he couldn't even beat a college football team that wasn't even in the SEC championship game, Big C. I mean, my opinion, they were in it, but they got blown out. So really, they were in it. They just had to show up for it. But is that worth $70 million? So what would Ed Orgeron get if he were to get an NFL coaching job, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Matt Rule had 1 year in the NFL as an offensive line coach. Then he went to Temple, Charlton. So when you think about him having long understanding of the NFL, he doesn't. People saying, well, he will bring players in and right the ship and say it's going to be my way, and he'll be assertive.
Yeah.
And I don't know why the media keeps thinking that you can walk in and yell at these grown men in the NFL. They will fight you physically. They don't care. They'll get a job with another team if they get cut by you, if they're good enough. So I don't know why they keep thinking guys with college mentalities can walk into the NFL and be successful. Think about it. Urban Meyer didn't make that run.
No.
Nick Lincoln Riley didn't make that run because they know how difficult it is. They talk to guys like Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between college and professional football? And he can let them know because they've been opponents of his.
Yeah.
But as you go out and you get these college guys, Charlton, think about it. Who was the last college coach to have any real success in the NFL, and how many of them has it been? There's been more failures from college coaches coming to the NFL than there has been successes. People will say, well, Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll failed twice in the NFL before he went back to college and retooled himself. Then he became the coach of the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah.
Jimmy Johnson had success out of the University of Miami with the Dallas Cowboys. And people will say, well, Barry Switzer. No, Barry Switzer didn't have any success. He fell on Jimmy Johnson's coattail down in Dallas. 2 years later, he was out of the NFL because he couldn't coach. Those players said, this ain't Oklahoma. We don't have to listen to that crap that you're spewing out here. And so when you look across the table, look at the coaches in the NFL, and tell me where the success stories are coming out of college, because these grown men don't have to hear that crap that I'll take your scholarship.
Yeah, I know there's a coach that coached for the Rams also in USC for the name of me escapes me just for a moment. John Robinson, and also he had success on both levels. But think about this. NFL.
Yeah, but see, he never won a championship.
No.
He ended up losing his job because he was losing. Think about the coach that left USC before he did, John McKay. John McKay was the inaugural coach with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when they were an expansion team in the NFL. They gave him a 5-year contract, and he said, I have a 5-year plan. And the media said, well, why do you have a 5-year plan? He said, because they gave me a 5-year contract. And that's all the time I have here. And that's with any coach. So when these coaches come in and say, you got Rule, he has a 7-year contract in Carolina. 7 years. McCarthy only got 5 in Dallas with NFL experience.
Yeah.
But you give Rule a 7-year contract just like you gave Gruden a 10-year contract with the Raiders. And so these guys got 5 years to screw it all up and get fired and still get paid.
Yep, it's amazing that as African-American men, they know that level. If women would say there's a glass ceiling. Well, black men have always said it's a color thing. That's why we talk about the paperback test. People can Google what that means back in the day also. Over 70% of the players in the NFL are African-American. I believe there are 9 starting African-American quarterbacks in the NFL this season at one point or another. In the NFL, in the divisional playoffs, think about this, Big C. There's 8 teams left. 4 of those 8 teams have African-American quarterbacks that are having a chance to represent their teams for the NFL for the championship. We have Patrick Mahomes, of course. We have Russell Wilson. We have Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson. Those 4 African-Americans make up half of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL. And this is a league that did not want Mahomes, didn't want Watson, didn't want Jackson, and didn't want Wilson. And I'm not knocking the white guys in it, but it is about color, and it's only going to take black men to be honest about color. What the NFL doesn't want to see is the Seattle Seahawks win the NFC. I'm just saying that because it's unprecedented. If they win or not, that's based on their effort. But the NFL doesn't want to see that because they have a 75% chance, just like the number of black men in the league, and none of them are given the job. They have to earn it. They have to pull it out of the ground like gold, Big C. They don't want to see 2 black men representing the NFL in the Super Bowl when they know those men can't get a job once they finish playing, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when I think about even the MVP voting in the NFL this year, Lamar Jackson did not win that unanimously. You thought he would have been the unanimous choice of the MVP of the league. There were one guy who held out against Lamar Jackson. That guy is Bill Polian, who does not feel that Lamar Jackson is an NFL quarterback.
Really?
And you think about that. Yes, he was the architect of the Buffalo Bills and the Indianapolis Colts. He got a Super Bowl ring with the Indianapolis Colts, but he never won one with the Buffalo Bills. But here it is. He would not vote for Lamar Jackson as the MVP quarterback of the NFL, the Pro Bowl quarterback. So how can you look at that if you're Bill Polian, knowing that the landscape of the NFL has changed? And that's the same reason that blacks can't get an interview or a job as a head coach in the NFL, because you got people like Bill Polian. Bill Polian thinks like the normal establishment of the NFL, that this league was built on us.
Yeah.
That where at one point it all looked like us.
Yep.
Whether it was a coach, whether it was a quarterback, even every position player looked like us when I started with the NFL. And that's Bill Polian's mindset, that he would not recognize Lamar Jackson as the MVP of the NFL, yet it was unanimous amongst everybody else who had a vote. He was the one holdout looking for, hey, he doesn't represent what I would have drafted when I drafted Jim Kelly, when I drafted Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
That's not the type of guy that I look at to be the face of the modern-day NFL. I want to go back to that guy that I had, the drop-back pocket passer. So as we look at how the landscape of the NFL has changed, but it's still the same in many ways, Jonathan, is that you want the guys that look like you and act like you when you do the interview. Think about it. When McCarthy interviewed with Dallas, he spent the night in Jerry Jones's house. Marvin Lewis didn't spend the night in Jerry Jones's house.
No.
He sent him back to the hotel.
Yeah.
But he kept McCarthy in his house. So he was comfortable with the guy that looked like him, and he was uncomfortable with the guy who didn't, because he sent him back to the hotel and said, thanks for the interview.
That's crazy. Most white men are betrayed by other white men. I don't know why they act like you're not. Just look at their own throughout the history of that, Big C. Marlon Briscoe played for the Denver Broncos as an AFL team in 1968 and considered to be the first black American quarterback to start a game in the modern-day NFL. Now, Briscoe, his rookie year as a defensive back, he was a defensive back, Big C, and then the starting quarterback got hurt, and that's when they brought on Briscoe to start. And that's 1968, Big C. We're going back almost 60 years that we're still dealing with these kind of things. And it's amazing that just like the four quarterbacks that are African-American that are starting in the NFL divisional playoff round, just like Briscoe from 1968, Briscoe was a defensive back, and they were still telling Jackson and Watson, and maybe not as much Mahomes, but that you guys should be defensive backs. There are guys that won't even get the opportunity now because they say, well, he should be a defensive back. The days of Briscoe to now haven't really changed, and they're even about the same direness, Big C, in the coaching ranks. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, if you look at the playoffs games we just had this weekend, the Philadelphia Eagles, Greg Ward, wide receiver number 84, played quarterback at the University of Houston just 2 years ago. Now he's a wide receiver in the NFL. He set records down at the University of Houston. He followed Case Keenum down there, Jonathan. Yeah. So as you think about African-American quarterbacks in college getting the opportunity in the NFL, it is very slim. They will draft guys from colleges, Charlton, we haven't even heard about because he's white. They say he has a great upside.
Yeah.
Yet we've seen black quarterbacks win on the college level, on the national level, and they can't get drafted as quarterbacks. They're drafted as receivers and running backs, and some even, transferred to running back.
Yeah, that's happened. But, Big C, let me ask you, what's it going to take to change it? Rooney Rule, that's something that white men came up with because of the late Art Rooney, Big C. But at the same time, is there a way that we can guarantee that people at least get the chance to start at the same finish line and not somebody starting at the 50-yard line, which the average white player, whether it's John Lynch as the GM down in San Francisco, if he didn't have white skin, he wouldn't be the GM. I know they can talk about Gene Washington being part of the head of the NFL, et cetera. And Gene, so many players have had ancillary roles to be considered the best or at the top leadership role. But if you're an African-American coach and you know that Briscoe was the first coach, the first quarterback in the league in 68, and things haven't changed, But of the guys that give them the chance to, half of the starters have gotten, half of the black starters are in the playoffs. Half of the white starters are not in the playoffs. If you're a GM, don't you want to win? So what can we do to give those same players that want to go into coaching? I want your thoughts. And I know you're honest about it. What can they do to at least have the same invitation to the starting line, Big C? Your thoughts?
The greatest fear in the NFL and in all professional sports, Charlton, is that when you give an African-American coach the reins and he's successful, that lets you know that he's more talented than his white counterparts. That's the biggest fear in the NFL. If you gave 50% of the league African-American coaches, Charlton, and 80% of those coaches were successful and made the playoffs, what does that look as the landscape of the NFL, that these guys can coach? And you look at the success ratio that we've had with African-American coaches ever since we've had them in the NFL, Charlton. They've made the playoffs.
Yeah.
I believe every African-American coach that has been in the NFL has made the playoffs at least once in his career.
Yeah.
When we look at the plethora of white coaches that lose consistently every year, when the playoffs starts, look at the NFL teams that don't make it. They have white head coaches. Nobody said all these guys are on the way out. They start making excuses for these coaches, that they had an injury problem, whatever it comes up with, Charlton, that, down the stretch, they lost a couple of tough games. They don't say that about the African-American coaches when they don't make the playoffs. But if you have African-American offensive and defensive coordinators, think about it. If you have all these African-American players in the NFL, we talked about the Hall of Fame inductees earlier. When you looked at the skill positions on offense, Charlton, those are African-American players.
Yeah.
They were being inducted into the Hall of Fame. You look at the skill positions on defense. We look at those safeties. Those are African-Americans other than John Lynch.
Yeah.
John Lynch, of the safeties, he has a GM job. The other safeties don't, but they were all minorities. They don't have a GM job. John Lynch got it. Why? Because they said he was intelligent. Was he more intelligent than those other safeties that were playing the game during the same era that were more dominant than him? No. But he got the GM job, Charlton, because of his complexion. That's the reason why. When we look at broadcast television during football games, the majority of the analysts during those games are Caucasian, Charlton. They're Caucasian. You're going to tell me there were no intelligent black players to that percentage playing at the time? If the league is 70% African-American, why is it you don't have 70% of the game analysts in the NFL during broadcast African-American? Are they not intelligent enough? If they could dominate the game physically on the field, and not just physically, but talent-wise, mentally, they have to be able to execute. So if they can execute at a 70 percentile over the 30 percentile of mainstream on the NFL field, why can't that transcend into broadcast jobs, in the coaching jobs, in the management jobs?
Yeah. Well, there's some talk even that the mothership is going to change. They're going to add or change. They're going to make some changes in the broadcast booth. I thought Booger McFarland was a lot better than what they had last year when Witten went back to play for the Dallas Cowboys. But everybody has their own opinion. I just want to ask my white brethren, not the ones that are crooked, but the ones who are decent, do you really want competition to determine who helps you win? And if that's the test, Big C, I think when you have inclusion, you get the best of everybody. The NBA's figured it out for the most part on the playing side, and I would say maybe not as much on the coaching side as I would like to see, Big C. But I don't think the NBA is afraid of having an all-black lineup, if that makes any sense to you. I think the Major League Baseball, the reason you don't see a lot of African-Americans in that is they'll get Dominican players and pay them less in those Dominican leagues, that they'll go down there and get a 500 guys try out for a team. They'll keep 2 or 3. They don't got to pay them any money, unlike having that done with inner-city kids. But I think of the 3 major leagues, I want to get your thoughts, and then we'll get on to something else. Do you think the NFL, the NBA, or Major League Baseball is more fair? I couldn't care less about if they say we're fair, but when you see the product, which one is more fair in your opinion, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about fairness in all the major sports in North America, Charlton, it has to come down to the NBA. The reason for that is that the players own 53% of the league. The prescience of the players in the NBA to be able to negotiate in their collective bargaining that they have a commanding share of the profits of the league, Charlton. So when you think about fairness, If that league is dominated by African Americans and you own 53% of the league as players, then you have to look at the NBA as far as fairness. Look at the coaching tree in the NBA. You have head coaches, you have assistant coaches that are African American on every bench in the NBA is represented by at least one African American coach, Charlton, if not two.
Yeah.
So as we think about fairness in this league and giving opportunity, the NBA is in the forefront of all the leagues in professional sports as far as providing opportunities for African Americans.
Yeah, I think the way you get anything done is by talking about it. I even think about a Big C Sports podcast on the iHeartRadio platform. The great Steve Harvey is on there with Publishers Clearinghouse, win $5,000 a week forever. Yeah, I want to have that too, Steve Harvey. But Harvey makes $40 million a year, and we're looking at athletes getting paid. Well, he's making more money than all the athletes, Big C, $40 million a year for the great Steve Harvey, and he's having an advertiser on the Big C Sports page. So really, I just appreciate opportunity. Just like Steve Harvey. He was on the Miss America pageant as one of the hosts and presenters, also has his own talk shows, etc. But nothing happens without opportunity. Nothing does. I remember doing an internship. Rush Limbaugh was there when I was out of college. He got opportunity. But he looks like the mainstream that says, hey, he's like one of us. Just interesting how Jerry Jones had one man spend the night at his house and the other guy had to get a hotel. I wonder what color they were, Big C. College football will close out 2020 NFL draft prospect. Think about this. The track is early. The entries that are leaving for college football, from college football to the NFL 2019 season, think about this. There's a lot of big names that are jumping early, Big C. The NFL has a total of 76 underclassmen that have already declared for the NFL draft. The deadline for these underclassmen to declare is Monday, January 20th. So they got about 13 days, Big D. There's no guarantee an NFL guy is going to give up his spot, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's just the underclassmen. You got to think about guys who have lost their eligibility, who spent their 4 years in college, Charlton. These are the guys who still have college eligibility. It's always a 50-50 proposition. Yes, there's some of these guys that are going to be ranked in the top 50, top 100 of that 76, but there's also going to be an equal number, if not a greater number, of college seniors that are coming out. So as I look at these players saying, okay, I want to play in the NFL, and that's the ultimate goal of every college football player, Charlton, to play in the NFL. It's not going to come to fruition. So as you look at this 76, and we know that the NFL normally takes about 160 new players every year, Charlton, that replaces players that are already on the roster, whether it's retirement, injury, or they just no longer can produce at that level.
Yeah.
All of these players are not going to have a job in the NBA, in the NFL, and all of them are not going to get drafted.
No, they won't. It's about opportunity, but you got to know if you're going over to somebody's house. You know what? At Jerry Jones' residence, guess who's coming to dinner? It's not Marvin Lewis. It's the Good Old Boy Network. And if Jerry Jones doesn't speak out against it, then how can we? You would think Bob Kraft would think, he's drafted black quarterbacks, never had an African-American coach as far as I know. But he's had some assistants on the staff under Bill Belichick. Fairness is about equality and having a chance to win. That's the only way. But I know white men, they want to win. If you want to win, you put everybody at the starting line, and the person who crosses the finish line first, that's who you get the chance to. You don't do that when you don't give the opportunity. There's 17 college football programs that will be looking for new head coaches in the 2020 season. And just a couple of them, Big C, we have guys like New Mexico, this Danny Gonzalez, Fresno State, Kellen DeBoer, Boston College, this Jeff Hafley, Appalachian State, Sean Clark, Memphis has Ryan Silverfield, Colorado State, Steve Azevedo, Florida Atlantic University, Willie Taggart, UNLV, Marcus Arroyo, University of Southern Florida, Jeff Scott, University of Texas, San Antonio, Jeff Taylor. There's a lot more guys on that list, Big C. There's a lot of turnover, and I wonder of those colleges, just like in the NFL, how many will even give an African-American an interview, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, we know Baylor won't do that, Charlton, and Rule just left Baylor today. Not only that, the owner of the Panthers gave Baylor $6 million, which was the buyout for Rule to be able to come and coach the Panthers. So, you talk about a guy who has to be the greatest interviewer in the world. That has to be Matt Rule, because You got a guy that pays $6 million for you to get out of your contract at a major college in Texas, and then gives you another $60 million to coach his team for the next 7 years. So I don't know what Matt Rule say in his interviews. Maybe he got some pixie dust or something that's thrown up in the air. Tricking a lot of people. But he did a tremendous job in getting that interview and that contract.
Yeah, he did a better job in that interview than he did getting interviewed by the University of Georgia that gave a beat down to Baylor. Just amazing. But you could be a white guy and get blown out in a bowl game, and an ownership of the NFL says that white dude's worth $70 million. Think about that. You could be, there's so many people that are in the opportunity that are just not given that chance to compete. I think if white ownership treated the African Americans the same way when they look for a job, if they did that same garbage when they're trying out for the team, there'd still be one or two black guys in the league, because they would just go with the skin color, the paperback test. And Jerry Jones knows that's true. That's why Dak Prescott doesn't have a contract. It's not about, well, we want to make sure he's the right guy. He's the second leading passer in the history of the Dallas Cowboys. Fell just short of Romo. But that doesn't mean you're the best. It means you're passing a lot because you're behind. But as far as accuracy and winning, he has as high winning percentage as anybody outside of Troy Aikman and Roger Staubach in the history of that program. And they still play around with him like his money's that important. I think that's garbage, but it's going to that maybe that's part why the Dallas Cowboys don't win also. Big C, you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. The apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google. Our Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. I want to just get your thoughts on one more thing, and I want to close out with the NBA games. But when you think about, and I want to ask you personally, because you've been in broadcast, you've been recruited, you've earned the contracts, you've done that, you got the championships. Have you ever in your life felt like a white guy could do something that you couldn't do, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, no, Charlton, I never did. I didn't feel like anybody could do what I couldn't do, but I also had a disadvantage because I was a minority and all those different levels I went to. I had to compete because of my color, not because of what I could bring to the table, whether it was on the sports field or whether it was behind a microphone, Charlton. I was always looked at as a little different. And that's always been since I was a kid coming up in sports and even in the professional world.
Yeah, and I know because white men won't have these conversations publicly, black men will. They'll have it behind closed doors. Well, Bob, he seems a little bit angry, or he seems a little bit too articulate, or he seems a little bit too, he just say he's black and you're not comfortable with black men unless they're head between their tails. Yes, sir, no, sir. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Those days are over. That's why Donald Trump can be the way he is, as irritating as he is toward women. And President Barack Obama is a gentleman, and people still say, we don't like him because what? Bigotry is still there. But it's like a cavity. If you don't acknowledge you got a cavity, you're going to walk around with a sore mouth. You got to cut it out. I'm asking my decent white brethren to have that honest dialogue. The crooked ones couldn't care less. I want to say Big C Sports, NBA style. Big C, before I finish that, let me get your thoughts on that.
On the part about acknowledgement, Charlton?
Yeah, the white guys got to come out and acknowledge it.
That day of acknowledgement, I don't know if it will ever come in America, because when you think of the people who have the power of the pen, the ones who signed the contract, Charlton, as long as that toehold is held by the mainstream and not given out in society in partialness, that will never happen. We will never have equality in America. I know as much as people want to push forward and say, you've gone so far. Think about this, Charlton, if you ever wanted equality in America. Nelson Mandela spent 26 years in prison in South Africa. 10 years after he got out of prison, he was president of South Africa.
Yeah.
South Africa eliminated apartheid, Charlton, where equality existed. You talk about a country that did more in 50 years in South Africa that America did in 200 years.
Isn't that amazing? And we all praise the great late Nelson Mandela. But everything starts with dialogue. That's my opinion. I think it just has to be. It might be painful, but it's necessary. Tonight's NBA schedule, you have the Detroit Pistons at Cleveland. The Thunder are playing at the Nets. Sacramento Kings at the Phoenix Suns. The Trailblazers are at the Raptors. And the Timberwolves at the Grizzlies, with the Knicks at the Lakers. I know we talk about so many things. I'm passionate about it. I'm not afraid. We don't need anyone's permission to breathe. Not everybody's going to like you. But I will say to all my brethren, no matter what color you are, if you want to do better in life, you got to have competition. Has to be how you get there. Not choosing somebody just because they're white or because they're black or because they're a woman. It has to be competition. Big C. Back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C. What are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, on this date in 2019, Clemson beat Alabama for its second national championship in a 3-year span by outscoring them by 30 points in the second half. I'm wondering why we still have to wait a week to get to the championship game in 2020.
Well, you don't have to wait a week. If you want to hear the championship game, follow Big C Sports every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. When you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America, and Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.